Hello, STEM Nation. Jeff here, and welcome to episode number 42 of STEM on Fire, where we interview practicing professionals in the area of science, technology, engineering, and math to help guide students interested in STEM careers. If you like what you hear, please share it with a friend. Now let's get fired up today with our guest Neil, and I hope our chat will help ignite your passion towards a STEM career. Neil Pineda earned a Bachelor of Science degree in electrical engineering and a minor in math from the University of Illinois in 2013. He has had multiple internships in college and is currently an energy storage engineer at E.ON. Welcome to the show, Neil. Fill in any gaps and share a bit of your personal life.
Hey, Jeff. Thanks for having me. I'm really glad to be talking on here, and I'm glad to be sharing my experiences. I mean, I think you pretty much got a good summary, and maybe we could just dive in.
Yep, Neil, so let's dive right in here. You had 3 different internships during college. How valuable were those internships in directing your career choices?
I would say invaluable. I think that there were, the kind of internships that I was getting, they really tested the waters of what I did like and what I didn't like. The first internship I got was more of a control engineer in an R&D position at a diesel company where we were working on, the controls for a hybrid engine. And I found some things that I did like. Control systems were really nice, but I kind of made the decision early that research wasn't quite for me. So I went to go try other things. In the meantime, in between the first and second internship, I had done a lot of traveling, studied abroad, did that sort of thing. And I found that as I traveled that a lot of the world still had a lot of basic issues with access to energy, power system problems. It's hard to enter the first world if your manufacturing in your country can't, be at an adequate level because there are scheduled outages. So after that, I decided I wanted to try energy. So then I started working at GE for about a semester, did a co-op there. And I learned more about project engineering there and a little bit less about the technical stuff, which, prompted me to say, well, maybe I could go work at the utility, and I'd learn a lot there. And I did. I learned a lot about distribution engineering when I was at the utility, but I wanted to be more focused on large-scale projects. So I then decided I wanted to go and work at a consulting firm that did design engineering and consulted to utilities around the country, and even globally. I had some experiences consulting to some power systems that were international, and now I currently work as an energy storage engineer at E.ON, and I would say that primarily our projects are lithium ion based energy storage for the grid.
Okay, so Neil, how difficult was it finding internships in college?
That first one, I think, was probably the hardest. It takes a lot of resiliency because it's this, chicken or egg problem where they want someone with experience, but you want an internship to gain experience. So finding all sorts of ways to, market yourself through your activities in school and your interests, and it was pretty critical. I think I must have gone through quite a bit of interviews that first go. But I think after the first one, people kind of saw the experience and were able to, translate it from field to field at that stage of my career.
And in your first internship, when you got that first internship, were there certain things that company was looking for on your resume?
I think they were looking for not necessarily very, very high technical skills off the bat, because I believe, a freshman at the time, but more or less indication that I had the ability to solve problems that were non-obvious. I think that was probably things they were looking for. And it actually helped, I think, that the director of the department got his PhD from my university, so he must have had some positive experience from electrical engineers from the university.
Neil, now we're going to shift back to E.ON. So you're an energy storage engineer, and I believe you said you're working on lithium ion batteries. Could you delve into a little bit more detail in that?
There's been this revolution in the United States over the past 20 or so years to bring renewables onto the grid. And, it's been met with some skepticism. Europe has gone pretty hard into the renewables. And I think one of the things that would that's really the key to full adoption of renewables on the grid is the storage of energy, because the sun doesn't always shine and it's not always windy. But having reliable, large-scale energy storage that can take the energy and place it back on the grid can make renewables a more viable solution in the long run. And so what I do here in E.ON is I'm more tied to the development stages of projects where we dream up these ideas in parts of the grid that we think might be useful one way or the other, and we either go to the ISOs and pitch them. We bid on projects that people are asking for, or we incorporate them at the sites ourselves. But at a very fundamental level, the energy storage projects are more or less to help facilitate renewables on the grid.
Okay, Neil, so somebody that's listening and is interested in renewable energy and working with supporting the grid, what type of classes would you recommend then gearing their curriculum towards in college?
I think a lot of them are in electrical engineering, but it depends if you want to be at a project level and bringing projects to market like what I'm doing. I would say probably transmission line analysis, or I think a lot of universities offer a green energy course. Those are really good courses. But then I would also say that if you have a heavy interest in the batteries, pursuing a degree in material science engineering is a great idea. I think to be an expert in the batteries at that level, though, it's more than a bachelor's degree. It's probably a PhD level research level to be able to be a true expert at the battery chemistry.
Okay. So yeah, I would imagine material science and maybe even a chemical engineering degree may help if you're interested in the battery design.
Yeah.
So Neil, what would a day look like for you?
There are probably a couple different days that I have. In terms of like a project lifecycle, there's a good chunk in the middle or in the beginning, where we are dreaming up these projects, seeing what the implications are if we inject energy into the grid, even at a strategy level, looking at whether it's economical for us to pursue certain projects. And then there are some days where it's a more technical heavy base where we have some drawings that we had contracted out, and I'm reviewing them for construction, and then sometimes we have operation issues, and I have to go and kind of work with operations to do outages and do maintenance for equipment in the field. So the position varies quite a lot, and I think that's something I like, is that a problem today and a task for today does not necessarily reflect tomorrow. So yeah, it varies quite a bit.
Yeah, and that's STEM Nation. Most of these STEM careers, every day is a little bit different, which is nice. And Neil, did you require the professional stamp for what you do?
So before I used to work here, I used to be a design engineer for utilities, and that job required the PE stamp. Now, if you work at the utility, I believe, or a generation company, a lot of that design goes just traditionally, not speaking for E.ON, just in general, it goes out in contracted. And so because of that, the stamp is not necessarily needed, but it's very highly encouraged in this field.
Neil, and what is one thing that really has you fired up about energy storage?
The market for lithium ion is looking good in that I think people are starting to realize that, we're going to need batteries and energy storage to make, renewables more prevalent. The EV sector of electric vehicles is really doing a lot of things to drive the cost of lithium ion down, and it's going to be a very competitive market, and I can only see good things for renewables moving forward.
All right, Neil, and we are going to move to an aha moment. Could you take us to a moment in time of an incredible aha moment you've had at work or your personal life, and tell us a story and how you turned that aha moment into success?
I think I maybe alluded to this earlier, but I did some traveling in my college career, and I don't know, for the majority of the speakers, but I grew up in the Midwest, and I didn't see a lot of the world early on in my life, and when I started studying abroad and traveling, I ended up in a couple countries where I realized the infrastructure wasn't as great as what we have in the United States, and that kind of clicked the aha moment in my head of, I'm studying electrical engineering, and I'm interested in so many things, but what is it that I want to do And in that moment, I think I knew that I wanted to bring clean energy to the grid around the world.
All right, that's awesome, Neil. And we're going to transition now to getting through college, right? These STEM curriculums, they're challenging, and electrical engineering is one of the most difficult ones, in my opinion. Could you take us back to when you're heading off to college and some things that you wish you knew that would help STEMers be successful in college?
Getting involved, and maybe that sounds really cliche, but it really is important because, like I said, how else do you get the experience to get an internship, to start a career off of if you don't necessarily get involved? There's so many clubs that have a technical hint to them. Getting involved in the Engineers Without Borders is a good club, or I know there's a lot of racing clubs like the solar car challenges and things like that. And from there, it's like a very easy access way to get to solve technical problems. And I think things like that are very valuable.
All right, that's some good insight. And we all know that college is different than the real life. So transitioning from college into your career today, what are some attributes you think you needed to develop or that you already had that allow you to be successful out in your career?
Yeah, so I kind of heard this somewhere in the middle of college, and I think the first time I heard it, it puzzled me. Is the concept of fail fast, fail early. And so the concept isn't necessarily to fail, but I think as engineers, we can get into the habit of thinking about a problem in all sorts of different ways, but never trying to truly attack it. So I think taking a step back sometimes and saying, hey, you know what? I'm going to try this. I'm going to go 30% into it. And if it doesn't seem like it's the right way to do it, I'm going to go a different route, as opposed to trying to fully flesh out the solution to a problem from the back. I think, all the way through. I think that's probably a good habit to have, is to try as opposed to thinking everything out.
STEM Nation, you got to give it a try. Don't be afraid of failing. The only way you're going to learn is by failing, and don't be afraid of that. And we're going to take a quick pause to thank our sponsor, Audible, who's offering a free audiobook. You can head over to STEMOnFireBook.com. That's STEMOnFireBook.com to get a free audiobook of your choosing. If you decide to cancel within 30 days, there's no cost, and you keep the audiobook. And Neil, it is lightning round time. Are you ready?
Yeah, think so.
All right. What's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
Right as I graduated, my physics teacher told me, and this is graduating high school, he said, there's no such thing as too much math. And I totally agree in that math is like this biggest leap of faith you can ask someone to have, because the way it's taught in school is go learn X, Y, Z things for 16 years and then hope it pays off into something applicable. But, I'm here to tell you that it does. So, the more math you know, the more you can conceptualize the world in a way that it's sometimes hard to see you visually.
And what's a personal habit that contributes to your success?
I would say routine. I think that it's one of those things where you make time for going to the gym, eating well, getting sleep, and it's so basic, but it's very easy to get tired, and when you're tired and you don't have the energy to be as productive as you can be.
And a favorite internet resource or phone app?
Reddit is my favorite internet resource. There's a lot of really good subreddits out there that have good info. Ask me anything. I think it's a kind of an interesting concept. And I think it kind of relates to your podcast as well, as like experts in fields and famous people. You almost have direct access to ask them questions. And I think something like that is kind of cool.
And Neil, if you had to pick one book, what would you recommend?
Cosmos by Carl Sagan. I read that when I was 18, and it took me on a ride. I couldn't put it down. I think it's good to be very curious, and that book gives you a lot of things to be curious about. As
we wrap up here, could you share a parting piece of guidance for STEM Nation, and then we will say goodbye?
Be curious, and don't be afraid to fail. I think you don't know what it is you need to know later on, and I think being open to a lot of different topics and fields is very much to your benefit. I mean, there was a time where I had to learn some thermodynamics to solve a heating problem, but it was ultimately related to the electrical engineering problem, which was kind of neat. So being able to stay open to all sorts of different types of fields and being just curious will help you in the long run, because you never know what kind of problems you have to solve.
All right, Neil, thanks for that great insight and value. And with that, we will say goodbye. I hope you enjoyed our chat today with Neil. Head over to STEMonfire.com, subscribe to the email list to keep up with the latest happenings, and be sure to subscribe to the podcast on your favorite podcast player. And please share this podcast with a friend if you're getting value. Tune in next week where we talk with Jacob, who is a structural engineer. Until next time, I hope this chat has helped ignite your passion